we're talking to, is it Jan from Michigan? Please correct me if that is not correct.
No, that's
Jan
correct. Jan, Jan.
Awesome. Jan from Michigan. How are you doing?
Hi, Dan. Hi, Alice.
Hi.
Good, thank you. Good. It's nice to meet you both. I hadn't seen your show before, but it came up my YouTube feed, and then there's this poll question on there about astrology. So I answered it, and it said, "Oh yes," and I'll call in. So I called in.
Fuck yeah, that's what we like to hear.
Astrology. And by the way, it's Jan. It's definitely not Jay. I'm Jay opposite. Okay, so
cool.
I'm opposite of Jay. Yeah, it's I came to I was a Christian, was a Catholic, grew up. I have a bad joke about that when you mentioned the Boy Scouts. I would joke that my mother wouldn't let me be a Boy Scout. She said, "You don't need it. You're a Catholic. You have priests to molest you."
Oh my God.
That's a dark joke, but I appreciate
Jesus Christ. Like,
yeah.
You say that, but also like the same American like representatives for a lot of these cases for like the Catholic Church are also used in like the Boy Scout cases and stuff. So like there's like, oh, there's some dark ties there. But yeah, moving on from that.
I say I should probably drop that joke just because of the age of times gone by, and unfortunately never happened to me. But you know but anyway the critical thinking is what happened to me. As I started to embrace critical thinking for a lot of pseudoscience and a lot of conspiracy stuff, and the more of that started to ring, the more and more the Christianity and all of these things just started saying, no, this just doesn't hold up to any kind of critical thinking.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the way that went. The on where all those things had come from. But when I first got on hold, you were talking to Jessica, the sex therapist, and that was a really interesting conversation. And I was thinking about it at the time. So I'm going to be 62 this month. Growing up in Chicago,
Oh, I just said happy birthday.
What was it? Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Growing up in Chicago.
My parents were divorced. My mother, and my mother was a single parent with a long-term boyfriend. By the way, single parent, no welder, but I'd like to see any welder go in and wait tables for 8-10 hours and see what that's like. It's sure. But anyway, her long-term boyfriend had. And these are adult people. These are, I was the youngest of 9, so this was not, these weren't young kids. He grew up in a fairly, very conservative family and had a lot of sexual hang-ups that came out of this. And, many years later, as an adult, my mom confided with me that this man, I'll leave his name out of it just in case anyone hears my voice in there. His approach to sex was to have her go to bed, go to sleep, and then he would come in and start his business while she was asleep.
Oh my God!
Routinely, yeah, and my mom's take on that was that he was not particularly, talented, or felt he didn't have performance and long-term lasting and stuff. So it was in his mind as if he was, oh, you missed all the good stuff because you were sleeping, as a way of compensating for what he felt was a lack of performance ability, which is just but you just wonder, how does a person, how do you live with a mind like that and not want to fix it and not want to say, I got to tear this apart and get my mind straight, because this is no way to go through life.
I agree, Jen. The Bible and Christianity has never upheld the value of consent. Never. you know, you can talk about what the Bible says about men and women all you want. You're not going to find any verses that say consent should be held above all else. It's not a thing that was around in that time, I suppose. I mean, like, I'm sure there are people who probably had an idea of it, but it wasn't codified in Christianity. And it's a secular concept that has come about since then. It really has, and it's really sad the way people treat the relationships and treat these, ideas of what they should be like and who has the right to do what with other people's bodies. Like, you tell me that story, and I hear a story of spousal rape. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. But I don't know. They may not see it in those terms, and that's terrifying. That is awful. But like, that shit is still happening today. Like, that's, we talk about the story that happened a long time ago, but I guarantee you there's Christian couples right now that are going through that, and maybe not exclusively Christian ones, but like, it does happen in those communities, and it's very terrible.
Right. Well, and then I wasn't where I wasn't going on that. I respect that certainly could come to mind, but I go from my mother's telling of it, and the consent issue was never really the part of the story there. That was not the issue. It was to her. She was expressing that he seemed to be so insecure in his own performance ability that he wanted to create a scenario where, she had missed all the good action because she was sleeping when it began. And so all she got was the finish,
That's completely foreign to me. I'll be honest.
It is. And then on that same person, so some years later, I'm some years older, and we're with a group of us in a car, including the youngest of 9. There's 2 older sisters who are, many years older than me. I'm probably 14 or 15, and they're older, and Bob's in the car. So there's like 5 of us in this crammed in this car, and we're going someplace, and the women were making cracks about sex, just lighthearted ones, and some entertainer had been recently on, whatever it was, Burt Reynolds is in centerfold of Cosmo. Anyways, he said some sexual, jokes are being made. And the man says, "Oh, I liked it better in the old days when women didn't like sex."
Because women used to not like sex. That's for sure.
They laughed hysterically at this, and my mom's like, "Oh, come on. We always liked sex. We just never told you guys."
Yeah.
Because it was socially unpleasant, and so that's the same, it's from the same things, from this patriarchal. Yeah. Women can't be sexually aroused and sexually, promiscuous. It can't be these things because that's unladylike. That's, it falls in the same thing with genital mutilation amongst women too. It's just take away their desires.
Yeah.
So that they don't have these things.
Yeah. Again, going back to, what the Bible says about men and women is that, like, you always have to be on the lookout for men because they are the ones with this, like, sexual desire. Actually, well, I take that back. There are stories of like women being sexual temptresses and stuff like that. So I'll say that much. But like, yeah, there's definitely this weird idea that is perpetuated in the culture that says that women don't enjoy sex, that sex is purely for the enjoyment of a man, and that's only because, like, I don't know, people have made it that way. It doesn't have to be that way. You can definitely change that. But Jan, I do have to let you go at this point because we are already over time on the show, and I want to talk to some other people. But thanks again for your call, and thanks for your stories there. Those were entertaining to listen to. I appreciate you calling in and watch. Listen, you folks, this has happened a couple times now in the past few weeks. You folks who are watching the show for the very first time and are like, yeah, I'm just gonna fucking call this dude. Like, y'all are something else. Shout outs to you guys. I wouldn't do that personally. that's not my style, but hey, more power to you, I suppose. Alice, any thoughts on that call?
No, I was kind of curious where he was going to go with the astrology bit, but then it took a turn that I didn't expect, and I wasn't sure where it was going.
I wasn't sure where it was going either, but there were some interesting anecdotes in there about people and how they communicate with this stuff. I mean, the stories that he's talking about are just, that's outside of the traditional theology. That's outside of what's codified. Again, it's just what people say, and that's like the culture that people grow up in. And I think it's important to talk about these conversations where it's like, yeah, okay, maybe the Bible doesn't explicitly say these things that you believe, but you believe them anyway. And that culture is almost codifying it in its own way. So